Come and sit with me. Book 2. The Path is Your Manifestation. Written by Richard Dotz. Chapter 1. Come and sit with me again. It is such a wonderful privilege to be back here, holding this imaginary conversation with my readers once again. When I set out to write Come and Sit with Me, the first book, I had no idea that it would lead to the sequel you are now listening to or holding in your hands. All I intended to do when writing the first book was to discuss the finer points of manifestations in a candid way and share the pitfalls I had fallen into and taken a long time to get out of. Hopefully, by reading about some of my personal experiences, readers can identify similar situations in their own lives and figure out ways to work around them. I am humbled and heartened by the response to the first book of this series. The enthusiastic response to the first book confirms my hunch that even in this modern age, many of us seek to find a higher sense of purpose and direction in our lives. We do not just want to manifest more stuff. Instead, readers around the world have asked for ways in which they could be of greater service and love to others. Readers have wanted to know how to fulfill their dreams of becoming better teachers, writers, parents, lovers, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters to those around them. When I first started studying Abraham Hicks many years ago, I could not understand why they placed so much emphasis on the self and on feeling good. Part of me wondered about the question, what about serving others? It was only years later, after I reached a new place of understanding, that I finally realized the significance of their teachings. If an individual does not first place the emphasis on himself and ensure his own well-being, then he can be of very little help to others. If one is constantly living in a state of lack and limitation, and therefore manifesting lack and limitation, he is of very little use to the world. He is constantly taking from the world. On the other hand, when one lives from a state of flow and abundance, so much flows to and from him that he naturally feels compelled to be of service to others. Once I realized this, my whole perception changed. I was no longer resistant to my own good. I no longer played small just so that I could fit in and appear to be sensitive to the needs of others. I no longer brought myself down to the level of those I was perceiving to help so as to make them feel better. I realized that by doing so, I was really helping no one at all. I finally understood that I could be of much greater service to others by becoming an inspiration and living from that place of inspiration, rather than acknowledging and sympathizing with their lack. Living in this manner requires that you turn your attention inwards and place your undivided attention on your inner state. It requires that you, at least in the beginning, ignore what people around you have to say and tune out their reactions to your newfound success. This is perhaps one of the most difficult things for us to do. The fear of being judged is one of the most pervasive fears that keeps us trapped at our current level of achievements. This is the reason why most people find it difficult to break through to a whole new level of desired success because they are so afraid of rocking the boat or ostracizing their friends and family members who have become accustomed to their old selves. But understand that thinking in this manner would be falling into the same trap that we have talked about so many times in these books, that of allowing yourself to be affected by outer evidence, circumstances, and perspectives. In order to create a truly desired reality, you must cultivate your own inner state such that you become imperturbable and impervious to the judgments of others. This is not to say that you develop a callous or arrogant personality, but rather one in which you are not swayed by the words and actions of others. The more you live this way, the more your good will flow to you, and the more you can be of service to others. One of the questions I'm often asked is, what happens after you manifest everything and get all that you want? This question stems from an incomplete understanding of the creative process because, as Abraham Hicks puts it, we will never be done. We will never be done with manifestations and creations, not because we are greedy and constantly want more stuff, but because we are always engaged in the sacred process of creation. There will be new desires and projects that excite us. There will always be new goals that we strive toward, and there will always be new ideas that we want to bring into this world. We will continue to receive these desires and impulses because we are all creative beings. The focus of this book moves beyond just the simple manifestation techniques that allow you to get more shiny toys and stuff in your life. In this book, we go beyond manifestations and talk about how you can manifest some of the intangibles in your life. For example, how does one manifest a more fulfilling career? How does one manifest a more fulfilling relationship with friends and loved ones? How does one deal with perceived health issues? All of these require quote unquote advanced manifestation techniques because they are dealing with non physical circumstances and end states. This requires that we look at manifestations in a whole new way so as to apply these principles and techniques to these non physical and intangible goals. As we become more adept at the manifestation process, we will find our focus slowly shifting from the tangibles in our lives, such as money, toys, and gadgets and whatnot, to the more ethereal stuff in our lives. Of course, you can still have all the gadgets that you want, but they would not excite you as much. You now know what is truly possible. Instead of being excited about the acquisition of a new car, we may perhaps be energized by a project that changes the lives of others while bringing fulfillment to ourselves at the same time. As our manifestation goals broaden and become more intangible, we need new ways to visualize and bring them into form. This means that we must change the way we perceive the whole process of manifestation. Instead of looking at manifestations with a narrow view, that of asking for and attracting physical objects into our lives, we must broaden our perspectives to look at manifestations as something that happens all the time in our lives. Our life, therefore, is a series of never ending, always unfolding manifestations, one after another. If you recognize the series of manifestations that is constantly unfolding in your life, you develop a greater awareness of the amazing power that you have been bestowed. When you finally realize that every thought, feeling, word, and action of yours is creative and has a say in creating your future reality, you become more aware of how you live out each moment of your life. All of us have equal access to the great universal energy that flows through everything. In each moment, we can either allow 100% of this energy to flow through us, or very little of this energy to flow through us. When we allow very little of this energy to flow through us, we feel frustrated, angry, depressed, and mad at the world. We feel sad and discouraged as if the whole world is turning its back on us. We see problems everywhere we turn. It seems as if we are in a deep abyss with no way out and no light at the end of the tunnel. It seems as if there are no logical solutions to our physical problems. We have hit a dead end and nothing seems to be happening. This is a state that some people have inadvertently found themselves trapped in. I was once in this state myself for several years. What most people do not realize is that it takes tremendous energy to remain in this stuck state. It takes tremendous energy to deny ourselves of the universal flow and to push against the universal flow. This is the reason why it wears us out and why we feel so awful. We are constantly pushing against self imposed limitations and obstacles that really aren't there in the first place. We are spending inordinate amounts of energy trying to maintain the illusions that we have built for ourselves, not realizing the energy we are expending to perpetuate them in the first place. Have you ever visited Universal Studios or Disney World and looked at all the fake street fronts or castles they have built? It takes enormous amounts of money and electricity just to perpetuate that illusion, just to give you the feeling that you are on an actual street. But when you finally go behind the scenes and take a look at what is behind those buildings, you realize there is really nothing there in the first place. Everything was just a facade designed to keep you in the grand illusion. If only an individual in this position will let go, let loose, and stop pushing against all the perceived obstacles and problems that are out there, everything will straighten itself out. This is why I have always placed such strong emphasis on taking a light touch. When you take a light touch, you stop pushing against your problems so hard. You stop insisting that they're there. You reduce your focus on them. When you successfully change the way you think about these issues, the issues change right before your eyes. They literally dissolve and become non-issues. I come back to this point over and over again in my books because the act of not doing is something especially counterintuitive for us in our culture. We have been taught all throughout our lives to strive towards our goals and to engage ourselves in physical action. We have always been told to go out there and do something. Therefore, the feeling of no action and not doing feels very foreign to most people. So much so that we are not even able to sit still in our chairs for more than 5 minutes at a time. The state of no action and not doing is an extremely powerful inner state. It is one which is highly conducive to our manifestations and one that has been advocated by every spiritual or religious master that has ever walked the planet. Accomplished athletes, musicians, artists, and authors talk about being in a state of flow in which everything happens spontaneously through them without their active involvement. But it takes considerable practice to reach that state of flow in the first place because it goes against what we have been conditioned to do. That's why so few in each field ever reach it. Our culture is one that is predicated on action instead of non-action. Spiritual universal truths have always been about non-action and getting into the flow of things. Hence, a new way of thinking and acting in this world is needed, contrary to how we have conventionally been taught. Before we delve right into the conversation, I would like to suggest a few shifts to gradually ease you into your new desired reality. First, give up the need to constantly remind the universe of your highest desires. The universe already knows all of them and has picked up upon them the first time you held your intentions purely. Therefore, read this book not with the mindset of getting things done, but with the mindset of gently relaxing into your highest good. Ease into it. Second, if you have not read the first book of this series, it is recommended that you do so before moving on to this book, as I will be building upon many of the concepts covered in the first book. Many of the concepts here will be extensions of what we have discussed earlier. Third, read this book in a quiet place that you find yourself drawn to. I made this suggestion in the first book, and it is worth repeating it here. There will be certain places which you find yourself drawn to without really knowing why. This is your inner self's way of telling you to relax, to let go, and ease into your natural goodness. When you read this book and absorb its message in these settings, you will be relaxing and easing yourself into the natural flow of the universe. Finally, read this book with an open mind. There will be questions you have asked and questions you have not yet asked, but will do so in the future. I have often found questions coming to me when I was right for them and with them a full appreciation of the answers I have read earlier. So, in a certain way, when the student and mindset is ready, the teacher, question in this case, appears. And with that, let's get started. Chapter 2. The path is your manifestation.
It is so wonderful to have you back here again, Richard. It feels like we just had the previous conversation in book 1 just yesterday.
Yes, it certainly does. And that is because we ended on a very high note. I can even feel the vibration of that book as we speak, which I'm sure many of our readers picked up on as well while they were reading. When you think about a particular topic and leave it on a high note, it will continue vibrating at that high level each time you revisit it. So now, as thousands of readers around the planet continue adding on to these broader intentions we have set for this book, the associated vibrations will be elevated to an even higher level, which means this book will go on to benefit even more people.
I have to smile as I hear you giving this explanation because you very rarely use such esoteric explanations. But it is nice that you jump right into it in our second book. Can you give us a practical application of this vibrational stuff? How does one make sense of all of it?
You know, when I was doing my postgraduate studies, we were involved in very abstract and theoretical stuff. Most of the doctoral students could not see the immediate relevance of what they were doing, and as a result became extremely disheartened and frustrated by the whole process. They had entered the program hoping to make a change in the world, hoping to win the next Nobel Prize, only to find themselves stuck in the abstract world of statistics and number crunching. One day, I met a very brilliant senior professor who shared with us the words of Kurt Lewin, a famous social psychologist. Lewin said, "There is nothing as practical as a good theory." In that moment, everything just came together for me. I started finding purpose in my work. I realized that all these theories we were creating formed the fundamental basis of everything we would do in practice. And so you just reminded me of this with the question you just asked. Most of us struggle to see how all these would relate to our manifestations. Some of us struggle to see how these esoteric or spiritual truths can relate to our daily lives, when in fact they form the underlying basis of our daily lives. We are energetic beings, and it is only through a realization of our true nature that we can become effective manifestors and creators. To reframe what I said earlier in terms of manifestations, suppose that you are trying to manifest a particular sum of money in your life. How you think about that money each time you think about it matters. It makes all the difference. Suppose that you feel a sense of worry and desperation each time you thought about money. As such, that is the level which you are vibrating at with regards to money. That is the level which the topic of money is vibrating at for you. Therefore, each time you revisit and think about money, you pick up from the previous point which you have thought about the subject, which is a very low point on the vibrational scale. If you constantly worry about money each time you think about it, if your thoughts about money are predominantly of a negative nature, then money is unlikely to manifest for you because your vibrations are totally contrary to the feelings of abundance which you are trying to attract.
How does someone in this situation attract more money into his life then?
Of course, this applies to anything we are seeking to attract in our lives, not just money. But let's use money as an example because it is something that is close to our hearts. The key to effective and fast manifestations is to raise the vibrations of a subject each time you think about it. It would be helpful to ask yourself whether you are doing so each time you think about a subject. For example, if I can find a way to feel good about money, if I can find a way to feel hopeful about money, I would have raised the vibration about the subject beyond where it previously was.
Give us an example. For example, someone starts off by feeling worried about whether they can pay their bills. Now, that is obviously a very low vibrational level.
That's a low vibrational level because it is vibrating at the level of worry, fear, and lack. They are worried about not having enough money to pay their bills. All of our negative emotions and feelings are on the lower end of the vibrational and emotional scale, while all of our positive emotions are on the higher end of the same scale. If you want to attract the good things in your life, then you must allow your inner state to correspond to the higher end of the emotional scale most of the time. That is when you will be bringing yourself people, events, and circumstances that will bring more of these positive emotions to you. Let's suppose that an individual worries about money whenever they think about it. They are not making any progress on the vibrational scale with regards to the subject of money. Each time they think about money, they are vibrating at the worry point, which makes it difficult for their outer realities to be any different. But let's suppose that this individual comes into contact with these teachings and starts making a deliberate effort to turn things around. He starts finding creative ways to make the inner journey. So he thinks, although I do not have money to pay my bills right now, I've always had the money come to me in the end. Money always finds its way to me. Can you feel the difference in that thought?
Yes, now it seems more hopeful than worrisome.
That's exactly right. And hope is higher than the vibration of worry on the emotional scale. We have moved from worry to hope. This is what we mean by making progress and increasing the vibrations of a particular subject. If this individual will continue thinking at the new level of hope each time he thinks about money, then he would have made progress on the subject. The manifestations would start happening for him. Now, let's suppose that he has vibrated at the level of hope for a few days. As a result of these higher vibrations, he now has access to thoughts and feelings that were not available to him previously. He now sees new possibilities, whereas before, he only saw obstacles and dead ends. And this is the primary reason why we should try to consciously and deliberately raise our vibrations as much as possible. It allows us to gain access to new worlds that we previously have not been able to reach.
This is amazing. Everyone talks about feeling good so that outer manifestations can happen. But what you are saying here is that when we feel good, we literally gain access to more good feeling thoughts and information.
That is exactly right. It is a very important point and certainly not one to be glossed over. It is also the reason for the subtitle of this book. The path is your manifestation. Most people are so busy looking outside of themselves for the stuff and physical evidence of their manifestations. They do not realize that in the beginning, evidence of their manifestations will come in the form of better feeling thoughts and possibilities that will occur to them. These thoughts and information were previously not available to them because they vibrated at a level that did not allow themselves to receive them. Now, by deliberately changing the way they feel, they are finally allowing themselves access to this information. I have seen this happen so many times, not only in my own life, but also in the lives of others. For example, an individual who feels hopeful as opposed to worried now has access to a whole new world of information. He now has money making ideas and possibilities that have never occurred to him before. He may start making the much needed connection in his own mind. He may say, perhaps I should try this, or I am inspired to try this. The universe is trying to nudge us in the right direction all the time by giving us these impulses.
This is where I'm having a bit of trouble myself. When do we know whether we are getting ahead of ourselves by taking action, and when are we supposed to take action?
That's a good question. I have often cautioned against taking action in desperation to speed things up just for the sake of taking it. The action I am talking about here is best described as inspired action. Along with the impulse to take that action, you will feel a sense of lightness and a sense of flow, as if everything is lined up so clearly for you. The path literally lights up for you, and you are being told or shown what action to take. That is the kind of action we are going for here. It feels like the most natural thing in the world to do, without a single strand of self doubt or resistance within it. It is effortless action. If you need to second guess yourself and question whether you should do something, it's probably not inspired action. This means we are not yet ready on the inside.
In other words, the path will be shown to us.
That's right. The path will be shown to us by the universe when we are ready, and this path is actually part of our manifestation. This is the part so many people miss. They think that only the physical stuff is evidence of their manifestations, when in fact the path is also something we have manifested. We have manifested it by coming into alignment with what we are asking for and by maintaining our own inner states. It is by following this path that we are led to our greatest good.
So let's suppose that we receive no nudges or impulses after we have asked for something. What are we supposed to do?
We covered a similar question in the first book, and the answer is always to work on yourself in the meantime. Let us go back to the earlier example of the individual who was worried about money. Initially, his thoughts about money are all worry related thoughts. Now, suppose that something happens and he deliberately changes his thinking. He has then successfully moved from a vibration of worry to hope. Maybe the vibration of hope is still not enough for outer manifestations to occur, so what he should do is to keep raising his vibrations deliberately. When most spiritual teachers speak of raising our vibrations or raising our consciousness, they usually do so in esoteric terms and not in everyday step-by-step language. As such, most of us do not really know what it means. How do we translate it to physical steps? What does it mean to raise our vibrations? Simply put, raising our vibrations means changing the way we think about a certain subject. It means moving ourselves and our inner state up the vibrational and emotional scale. We raise our level of consciousness by transcending lower energies to higher energies, moving from negative emotions to positive emotions. So in the case of this individual, he can go higher than the vibration of hope. He can move gradually to optimism. He may think Things have always happened for me in the past. I should just relax and let the universe take its course. If he successfully reaches this point in his own thinking, he has moved up the vibrational scale once again with regards to money. He has moved to optimism and positive expectation or positive belief about something. This forward momentum is a very powerful state to be in because we are literally moving towards and into our desired realities. Chapter 3. Your stuff will pile up.
I believe it was Abraham Hicks who came up with this emotional guidance scale you are talking about. When I first read about the scale, I could not really see the relevance to my own manifestations. I thought they were just talking about good versus bad emotions.
Yes, when I first learned about the emotional guidance scale, I also thought nothing much about it. I thought they were illustrating which emotions led to positive manifestations and which emotions led to negative manifestations. While that is certainly one of the uses of the emotional guidance scale, the actual significance goes way deeper than that. The greatest value is derived from this scale when we deliberately move ourselves up the scale. That is the inner journey we need to take. In fact, it is the only journey we will ever have to make with regards to all of our manifestations. When the individual has successfully moved from an emotion of worry, which is quite low on the emotional scale, to a vibration of positive expectation and belief, he has made tremendous progress. This is when things will start happening for him. Therefore, the greatest value of the emotional scale is not in identifying where we are on the scale. It is in identifying where we are and then taking steps to move up the scale.
So, what you are saying is that when someone is at worry with regards to money, he will not be able to receive thoughts or information about money compared to someone who is at a level of positive expectation.
That is exactly what the law of attraction is about. The vibrations of positive expectation are very different from the vibrations of worry. Therefore, you cannot expect to feel worried all the time and be able to attract thoughts similar to those of positive expectation. The feeling of abundance which we are moving towards are very high on the emotional vibrational scale, and worrying will never get you there. However, once you reach a higher level on the emotional scale, say one of enthusiasm, then you are closer and in the vicinity of where you want to be. The reverse is also true, of course. When you are vibrating at high levels on the emotional scale, then you are so far away from the vibrations of worry that you do not worry at all. You would have forgotten how to worry because you are so far away from the vibrations. You have become incompatible with the worry vibrations.
I like how you phrased it, forgetting how to worry. That's certainly how I feel like most days after applying these techniques. It is like I am so far apart from those worry feelings.
If you look at everything with this framework, then we can quickly see that worrying is not the real problem. You can worry all you want as long as you can take the consequences of it, which is more things to worry about. Most people, when told not to worry, tell me that they like doing it, that it makes them feel safe and secure. These individuals do not know the full significance, or rather, the actual physical consequences which their worries are creating. If they knew the full significance and impact of their worrisome thoughts, if they could literally see all the negative manifestations they were putting into action, they would never think another worry thought again. But of course, unless someone is self aware, they are seldom able to link the eventual manifestations to their initial thoughts. This is the reason why we must deliberately move away from the lower vibrations on the emotional scale. Worrying is one of the more pervasive vibrations where we end up getting stuck most often. Some people spend almost their whole lives there. I should know, because I spent a third of my life there being trapped at that stage. I willingly remained at that level because I did not realize how destructive my worrisome thoughts were. I thought I was being concerned and planning for my own future, not realizing that I was manifesting all those undesired outcomes at the same time. What happens when someone starts making the deliberate effort to move up the emotional scale and vibrate at a higher level is this: they start building a positive, virtuous cycle. With each small step they take, outer reality responds. When outer reality responds, it again reinforces the good feelings which they feel on the inside, which goes on to create more positive outer manifestations. And so, this spiral of good feelings and good manifestations continues until they reach a very good feeling place within themselves. The catch is that the reverse is also true in all of this. You can easily substitute upward for downward and positive for negative in my above example and make the same point. The universe does not dictate whether we go up or down, it only helps us along.
I am beginning to see the significance of what we are discussing here. An individual who manages to change the way he thinks about money, moving from a vibration of worry to positive expectation, has actually shifted his inner state considerably.
That is correct. And if he continues to maintain this inner state of positive expectation, it is when the outer path may light up for him. This is when money will start flowing to him, causing a change in his fortunes and a change in the tides. This is when we start undoing all the negative conditioning that has been built up over such a long period of time.
Is this why, when manifestations happen, they usually happen very quickly for a person? This seems to be what I've personally encountered and read.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. The effect of doing the inner work is exponential. Initially, it will seem as if nothing is happening because we are working against the cumulative effect of our past negative thoughts. We are trying to change the tides. We are going against the flow of the negative spiral that is trying to draw us down. However, if we remain persistent at it, if we do not give up, we start creating an upward spiral instead. The faster we go, the faster we go. Think about driving your car. The engine has to strain and get it moving in the first gear, but by the time we are in the fifth gear, there's so much positive momentum that the weight of the car just keeps it moving along. We need much more braking power at this point to stop the car. It is the same with our physical manifestations. At first, it will seem as if nothing is happening. However, as we engage in more of the inner work and as we raise our vibrations, it becomes easier and easier to do. Moving out of worry into hope was difficult and took a lot of effort, like shifting into first gear. But moving from hope to optimism is easier because we already have so much momentum going for us. It is like shifting from fourth to fifth gear. When we do all of this inner work, we are harnessing the momentum. We are setting things into motion that will result in outer manifestations. When we have to set so many things in positive momentum, the corresponding physical manifestations will be fast and pleasing too. Back in my early days, I heard Abraham Hicks say, and I'm quoting loosely here, that if you will tend to your inner vibrations and be in the vortex often, then the money has to pile up. Now, when I first heard them say this, I remember thinking, that sounds good. I wonder if they are using it figuratively or do they mean it literally? You can probably infer my inner state from my response back then.
I recall that Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich, had a similar saying. He said, "When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years."
I remember that statement fondly too. In fact, I read Napoleon Hill before I came to know about the Abraham teachings. So when I heard the statement about money piling up, I immediately made the connection between what these two great teachers said. What a lot of readers will ask, either Napoleon Hill, Abraham, or myself, is whether these teachers are just saying so to encourage their readers. Are they just meaning it metaphorically? Are they saying this to make their readers feel better, or do they really mean it?
That's what a lot of our readers will want to know too.
I can assure you, they mean it literally.
Wow. So when Abraham Hicks says the money will pile up, or when Napoleon Hill wrote that the riches will come quickly, is it all true?
All of it is true. Every single word. I'm able to say this with so much certainty here today because I experienced it personally for myself. After years and years of asking for money with very little happening, suddenly I reached an inner tipping point where everything just happened for me. It was like everything I had ever asked for and more came flooding into my reality all at once.
Did you wonder where the riches were hiding all those lean years?
I did not exactly ask that question, but I remember telling and thinking to myself when all of it happened, I finally know what Napoleon Hill and Abraham Hicks are talking about. They were telling the truth. It was a very surreal and indescribable feeling to be right there at that moment, making that realization. I had the proverbial goosebumps all over me. Napoleon Hill was really talking about the exponential power of doing all the inner work. His book, Think and Grow Rich, is really about doing the inner work and getting lined up on the inside. While he did not exactly use metaphysical terms, his teachings are all about developing a positive expectation that we will get what we want and thinking about our goals vividly and frequently. He was actually getting individuals to vibrate at the level of positive expectancy, which, as we have discussed earlier, is a high level on the emotional scale.
I remember reading about how Napoleon Hill's editors forced him to remove a lot of references to spirit in his book, Think and Grow Rich.
I have heard about those too, but I have not been able to personally verify it for myself. I'm definitely not surprised if this were the case, because success always has a spiritual side to it. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs and businessmen of our times are actually very spiritual. They may not consider themselves so, but they had a particular way of thinking and doing things. By acting in this manner, they were actually putting themselves in line with their highest good. They were aligned to receive the good that was lined up for them. Some of the most successful people I know in every field are extremely clear minded about what they want. When they have made up their minds, no one can persuade them otherwise. Once they have identified a worthy goal, nothing can sway them from it. No one will be able to talk them around. Of course, this also applies to individuals what we consider to be greedy or capitalistic, like those on Wall Street. These people have the single minded goal of making money, and they often do. These individuals have to tune out all the chatter from everyone around them that does not matter. They have somehow stumbled on the secret of success without knowing it.
Do you consider this ability to tune out the mental chatter a prerequisite to manifestations? Is this something we are born with, like a talent some people have and are better at than others?
We all have the ability to place our focus anywhere, and it is certainly a crucial aspect of manifestation. One must have the discipline to place their continued focus on the desired reality until it manifests. They must have the determination to keep their focus there despite the outer circumstances and outer evidence. Incidentally, persistence is one of the mental qualities emphasized by Napoleon Hill as well, so we are starting to see a pattern here. I believe some people do it better than others. Some people have the ability to tune out distractions and the opinions of others better. I have worked with many students over the years, and some do a better job tuning out all the extraneous bits that distract them from their goal. However, there is a downside to this ability as well, and it is this: ultimately, one has to be focused on the right things. For example, if you are trying to manifest a particular intention in your life, then you must place your undivided focus on an imagined reality where that item is already manifest. Some people use their focusing abilities the wrong way and place all their attention on the current reality. That will only result in the perpetuation of their stuck states. So, putting two and two together, I would say that while some people can naturally focus better than others, we still have to learn what to focus upon. This is where the value of all these inner spiritual teachings become apparent. Chapter 4: A Fast Way to Correct Stuck Manifestations.
Let's jump straight into the manifestation process. Suppose I have been asking for certain things for the longest time in my life, and they still have not manifesting. Why is that so?
I can certainly relate to this. Those who have read my book, Bad Money Secrets, will know that I asked for a certain sum of money for the longest time. I asked for it fervently for years, in fact, and still it did not come to me. I just kept asking and asking, trying to do every single technique and use every single trick in the book, but nothing worked. Most spiritual teachers will tell you what is the problem here. The problem is that an individual is not aligned with what he is asking for. And frankly, I heard that explanation so many times that I was tired of it. It was still all very vague to me. What do these spiritual teachers mean when they talk about alignment? And what do they mean when they say we must be ready to receive our highest good?
It is a concept that is readily understandable to those who have been through it, but not to the rest of us.
These concepts are relatable and understandable to me today because I have been through both ends of the tunnel. I have come in through one end and emerged through the other. But back in the days when I was still stuck in that tunnel with no end in sight, all of these descriptions made very little sense to me. It has always been my intention with this series of books to show our readers practical steps to demystify and apply these concepts. When spiritual teachers say that we are not aligned or are not ready to receive what we are asking for, all they simply mean is that we are placing our focus on things that are keeping us away from what we want.
As simple as that?
As simple as that. There is nothing complicated about manifestations at all. All complications happen at the level of the ego. We believe that things are difficult. We believe that doing all this spiritual work is difficult, so we come up with convoluted systems and ways to pray and ask for what we want. If we step back and take a clear view of everything, we will realize that manifestations are the simplest things in the world. They are what we have been born to do. We are meant to live a creative life.
Let's apply this to the current question. What could an individual be focused on that is preventing his or her manifestations from coming?
I think the best way to explain it will be from my own perspective. When I was asking for that particular sum of money, I was obsessed with it. Whenever I had a spare moment in my mind, my thoughts would automatically drift to that goal. I would find myself thinking or saying, I want that particular sum of money. Now, an individual may think that this constant obsession with and the constant thinking of his desires is something beneficial to him, but nothing could be further from the truth. When you ask for something with such intensity, you are usually focused on the very lack of that thing, which is why you perceive a need to ask for it so badly. You can try this simple test right now. Quiet your mind and then bring the two words I want to your mind. Tell yourself I want blank and let your mind fill in the blank by itself. What your mind automatically fills in and defaults to is something that you tend to want quite badly in your life. For most people, it is also the thing which they have trouble manifesting. Therefore, if you find yourself thinking, I want, followed by your desire, most of the time throughout the day, it is an indication that you may be focused more on the lack of something as opposed to the presence of something.
So, what you're saying here is that when we keep thinking about a particular want, we keep acknowledging the fact that we don't have it yet.
That's exactly right. And that acknowledgement, that constant noticing that you don't have something yet, is keeping your manifestations away from you. And this is what spiritual teachers mean when they speak about being out of alignment and when they say someone is not in the place to receive their good. It is not because the individual does not deserve to have it, but because the individual is vibrationally in such a different state than what is needed to receive what they have asked for. When I was asking for that sum of money all those years, I was acutely aware of and noticing the lack of it, which is what made me want it so badly. My constant asking for the money was actually keeping it apart from me.
That's another tricky part, which some have trouble understanding. Aren't we supposed to want what we want, or rather ask for what we want a lot?
Yes, it is absolutely all right to ask for what you want, but after you have asked for it, what do you focus on? Do you focus on the presence of what you have asked for or the absence of what you have asked for? Do you focus on whether it is there or whether it is not there? That makes all the difference in the world. After asking for that particular sum of money, I would continually focus on the fact that it was not there. My noticing that it was not there yet made me ask for it even more, which in turn made me notice that it was not there yet. An individual can be trapped in this cycle for several years, like what happened to me. It was a very miserable and tiring time for me.
And how did you get yourself out of the situation?
I got out of the situation through trial and error. It took a long time for me, but I slowly managed to turn my thinking around. The advantage to our readers is that they do not have to take a long time like I did. They can do it by this evening. They can do it today by following all of these steps. First, you want to develop the conscious awareness that the path is the manifestation. This means that instead of only accepting the final physical object you are desiring as evidence of your manifestation, start looking at things a bit differently. Start seeing the truth for what it is. Start seeing the little pieces that happen along the way as manifestations that will ultimately lead you towards what you are asking for. Just simply having this conscious awareness will place you in a very different inner state that is conducive to you receiving your good. That's the first step our readers should follow.
What you are saying is that instead of being so fixated on that particular sum of money or relationship that I may be asking for, I instead remind myself that other interim manifestations may happen in the meantime.
These interim manifestations are stepping stones to your eventual manifestations. You remind yourself that other manifestations may happen, some seemingly unrelated to what you are asking for, that will eventually lead you to the final manifestation you seek. In other words, the path to the final manifestation will consist of a series of manifestations. But here's the problem: you don't know in advance what the path is going to be. Nobody except the universe knows. Therefore, when things start happening for some people, they do not even recognize it because here they are, so fixated on the thing which they are asking for and not realizing that something else has happened for them. This something else is going to eventually lead them to final manifestation, but they do not know it. Hence, they stay discouraged or keep cursing the universe for not giving them what they want.
So the universe leads us to our manifestations step by step, but we don't know in advance what all the steps are.
That's correct. The universe is always trying to get our desires to us through the path of least resistance. It is always trying to give us our greatest good. However, one of the most common mistakes made is to insist that things only come to us through a certain way. This is important, so I want to explain it more. Let's take the example of the sum of money I wanted. I wanted that particular sum of money, which was quite a considerable sum, all at once. Some people want $1 million all at once. They ask for $1 million and they keep on asking and asking. They do not realize that they have unknowingly placed a limitation on the universe, which is that the $1 million have to be delivered to them all at once. They engage in all sorts of outer directed actions trying to attract that sum of money, but their avenues will always be limited by those that can give them that money all at once.
I get what you mean. These individuals often buy the lottery because the lottery is one of the few avenues where we can logically get millions of dollars, quote unquote, all at once.
It is one of the logical avenues to our physical rational selves in which we can get $1 million all at once. That's why we gravitate towards it. And guess what? By continuously playing the lottery week after week, some people become fixated on it. They are actually insisting, through their inner thoughts and preferences, that this $1 million comes to them through this way. Now they have set up two obstacles for themselves without even knowing it. First, they want the money all at once. Second, they want the money to come through the lottery.
Wow, I didn't see it this way before.
The third obstacle they have set up for themselves is actually with their own perceptions of the lottery. Most people don't really believe they can win the lottery at all. They know about the chances and the odds. Thus, it's another obstacle on the inside to deal with.
No wonder most people are not successful manifesting in this way.
Yes, they are stacking the deck against themselves. Even before they start, they have already unknowingly set up three obstacles that will work against them. Can you see the obstacles they have unknowingly placed between themselves and their goals? It is the same for any other object which you ask for as well. Suppose that you ask for a car. Most people do not just ask for a new car purely. Instead, they set up these unconscious obstacles against themselves in the process. Can you come up with some of them?
I can think of one right now. They want all the money for the car to come to them at once so they can buy the car.
That's a good one. They ask for the car, yet at the same time, they are asking for all the money for the car to come to them at once. It may be $30,000 or $40,000 or even more. But what they do at the same time as they are asking for the car is to ask for the money to come to them as well. That is trying to figure out how something will come to you. That is trying to do the universe's job in the equation.
I am so thankful we are having this conversation because I never thought of it this way before. I have wanted big ticket items in the past, and each time I asked for them, I also asked for the money to come to me.
The big ticket item is what you are really asking for. The money which you are also asking for is the means to an end. It is one way in which you see yourself buying or owning that big ticket item. So there are really two separate intentions or two separate vibrations here. When people think about the big ticket item which they want, they usually feel quite good about it. They are vibrating at a high vibrational state. Then the problem begins. When they think about the money, their second desire, and how they are going to possess such a large sum of money, they immediately feel bad. They feel worse straight away. This is what is causing the vibrational mix to go awry. Right now, what I would encourage our readers to do is to check and see if this is true for them. Are you asking for something while at the same time dictating that the money come to you in a certain way? Are you asking for something while at the same time asking for the money to fulfill it? There is nothing wrong with asking for the money. This is also the path. At the same time, if it makes you feel good. If thinking about the path through which something will come to you makes you feel good, and by all means do it. But the issue is that it usually does not feel good to people. Thinking about the money usually makes us feel worse, like having knots in our stomachs. Immediately, we get that familiar sick feeling in the gut. The feeling manifests itself as a lump in the throat for me. That's what we are referring to here. This feeling stemming from your second desire is not conducive for the first manifestation. Chapter 5. Is belief necessary for manifestations?
I am starting to realize how true this is for myself as we speak, especially with regards to all my stuck intentions that have not manifested yet.
I always teach that the moment you become aware of something, you bring it to light and can start taking the necessary steps to change it. Therefore, something very significant has just happened here for all of our readers in similar situations. You have just identified a major block standing between yourself and one of your big manifestations. Now that the block has been identified, we can start working around it. What you have to realize is that there are infinite ways through which your desires can come to you. When I was asking for that particular sum of money, I did not really question why I wanted that money to come to me all at once. It was just a preference I had by default. So day after day, I kept asking for that particular sum of money while noticing that there was no opportunity that could bring it to me yet. Most people ask for $1 million or any other amount, and they expect that some miraculous event happens to bring them that $1 million. That is certainly possible, but why stack the deck against yourself in this way? What they do not realize is how they have set up their own thinking such that they do not really believe it is even possible. They have never made $1 million before, much less come into a possession of $1 million through a single event or a single deal. Therefore, they are asking for something which they do not even believe can happen, and that is making things unnecessarily difficult for them.
Which brings me to my next question. Is belief necessary in the manifestation process?
This is the interesting part. Abraham Hicks have explained repeatedly that belief is not necessary in the manifestation process. In other words, something can manifest for you even if you do not believe in it fully. This was certainly the case for me when I asked for some of the big stuff. I did not believe I could have them, especially in the beginning. But I kept asking for them, and my wanting became so quote unquote pure that I finally had them in my experience. Even after I had them in my physical reality, I was still going, I can't believe this happened to me. It's too good to be true. That's what Abraham Hicks means when they say belief is not a crucial component of the manifestation process. Of course, belief is a nice thing to have. If you have even some belief and some positive expectation that your physical manifestations will happen for you, it will make the whole process so much easier. However, you can also manifest something in your physical reality without believing in it, although that often works against most people. It is really quite a subtle point here which warrants a more detailed explanation. When Abraham Hicks explains that belief is not a necessary component, there is a greater explanation behind it. Suppose you have asked for $1 million while not believing that you can have it. Deep down inside, you believe that it is not possible for this $1 million to come to you through that one single deal or that one single lottery ticket. While it is true that the universe can fulfill your requests without your belief, look at the odds against you. Each time you think about that $1 million, what will you be focused upon? What will you be thinking about? This goes back to what we were discussing in the beginning. An individual is more likely to focus on the difficulties and perceived challenges in getting that $1 million rather than the ease and flow of it. In other words, when you do not believe in something, you usually believe in an alternative. Your belief in that alternative is that it is difficult for you to get that thing you are asking for is what causes most people to stumble. It is what causes the wanting to be less than pure and contradictory in the first place.
He focuses on the absence of what he is asking for rather than the presence.
There you have it. So we say that belief is not necessary in the manifestation process. The lack of belief often causes individuals to focus somewhere else. This focusing somewhere else is what causes their manifestations to be delayed and held apart from them, not their lack of belief. So here's the good news. Suppose that you have no or a very low level of belief that something you are asking for is possible. That's all right. You can continue to keep that belief so long as your level of wanting for that item is pure. This means that if you keep your focus on the presence of the item more often than on the absence of the item, it will come true in your physical experience very quickly. All that is required here is your mental and inner focus. That's all we are talking about. You choose what you want to place your focus upon, and hence dictate the way which you feel on the inside. That's all there is to it. If I were to summarize the whole manifestation process into a few words, it would be focus on what you want until you get it. The issue is that it has to be continued focus. And what do you focus upon? You focus and place your attention upon the good feeling thoughts and feelings that arise when you think about what you are asking for.
That's a very powerful explanation. I too have heard of similar sayings. For example, you become what you think about, but I did not understand their full significance.
It was the late Earl Nightingale who popularized that saying, you become what you think about most of the time. When you think about a desired object, you can either be thinking about its positive or its negative aspects. Some of the positive aspects include the good feelings you have when you admire the object, the good feelings when you use the object, the good feelings that the object evokes within you. Those are all the positive aspects. The negative aspects are the bad feelings you get when you realize the object is not here yet. The bad feelings you get is when you wonder why it is taking so long, and the bad feelings you get when you worry about how that object is going to come to you. Same object, but totally different aspects to focus on. Here's one of the biggest secrets. Most people focus by default on the negative aspects all day long. That is what is causing their manifestations to be stuck and slow or not come at all. They are indeed thinking about what they want all day long, but they are thinking about all the negative aspects of what they want all day long, which means negative or no manifestations.
How does a person know if he is thinking about the positive or negative aspects of an intention?
I love how everything comes back to the basics and fundamentals of what Abraham Hicks has taught. Your positive and negative emotions let you know whether you are focusing upon something wanted or something unwanted. When you are thinking about what you want and feel positive emotions, you are focused on the positive aspects of it and you are moving closer in the direction of your ultimate physical manifestation. Conversely, when you are focused on the negative aspects of it, you feel negative emotions and hence are creating negatively.
I can't tell you how many times I heard that from Abraham Hicks, but just glossed over it. I thought it was something so painfully obvious. I did not realize it could be applied to our manifestations in this manner.
That is, in fact, the whole art of manifestation. If thinking about something or keeping your focused attention on something makes you feel bad, then why keep doing it? Why allow yourself to dwell at that place? I can tell you that most people would give lots of valid reasons why they would want to dwell in that bad feeling place, and righteousness is one of them. They feel that they are in the right and therefore have the right to remain angry. These individuals do not realize that all these bad negative feelings are only hurting themselves and their own manifestations in the end. They are creating negatively by allowing themselves to stew in those endless negative feelings. Here's a scenario most of us should be familiar with. We are driving along, and let's say someone cuts into our lane. They express no signs of apology or thanks for letting them into our lane. Some people would stew in those angry feelings for a good 15 minutes. But why do that? Those negative feelings are certainly not hurting the other driver. They are hurting you and your manifestations. That is something very important all of us should realize. In fact, all of our negative feelings, even if they are about someone else, have never been about that person. They have no effect on the other person. The greatest detrimental effect is to ourselves, and yet we do not realize it.
This is another powerful nugget. I did not realize that these negative feelings we unconsciously hold onto for a long time can affect our manifestations.
They absolutely do. Anything that affects your inner state affects your outer manifestations, regardless of the topic or reason. Therefore, you may be stewing about your neighbor or someone who just cut into your lane. You may be feeling jealous that your neighbor just came into contact with a huge inheritance. Guess what? Those negative feelings of jealousy are not hurting your neighbor. They are hurting you. When you realize this truth, you become very careful with the way you feel on the inside. You give it all up and realize how ridiculous it is to let others dictate your inner state and therefore your outer results. Have you noticed how awful you felt when holding on to one of those negative emotions? Be it the emotion of anger, jealousy, criticism, sadness, and so on and so forth. They made you feel so bad and awful. That's a signal from your body telling you that it's not in its natural state of love and peace. It is vibrating at a very low level that is far away from how it is meant to operate. What you have to do is to let those feelings go and be restored to your natural state, which is a state of love and peace.
Something which you said earlier now makes sense for me. Earlier, you talked about letting go and not trying so hard. So actually, when we let go into our natural states of well being.
You have understood it perfectly. When we let go of all the strife and struggle on the inside, we do not just end up with nothingness. Instead, we end up with our natural feelings of well being, love, ease, flow, and peace. These are the feelings that flood our inner state and our awareness without us even trying. When we do nothing, those are the feelings that permeate our consciousness. However, when we try hard to do something, for example, to hold on to those negative, angry feelings, everything becomes a struggle.
If it feels so bad, why do so many people still allow themselves to hold on to negative feelings?
I would say there are two main reasons. First, most people are not students of this material and do not know the negatively creative power of their thoughts and feelings. They do not believe that every thought and feeling immersed in has the power to create their current and future reality. They see it as non consequential. Probably the only consequence they see is that it feels bad for them, and that's it. If only they can see the full picture. The second reason is what I described in my book, Playing in Time and Space. We default to those negative feelings because they feel so familiar to us, such that in a perverse way, they actually feel good. It is some sort of an addiction to bad feelings, like the high you get when you watch those television dramas. You end up getting caught up in all the drama of the characters and feeling happy, angry, or sad for them. But who is the person affected by all these feelings? Certainly not the actors. They are all just acting. The person who has to bear the consequences long after the show is over is the viewer. Chapter 6. Is there a gestation period in manifestations?
So, the first step in dealing with stuck manifestations is to develop an awareness that the path is the manifestation.
The very first step is to stop seeing those manifestations as stuck. We do so by developing an awareness that the path is the manifestation. This is a very important awareness to have. I have a simple analogy for this. Suppose that you want to plant an apple tree that will eventually bear you delicious red apples. What you do is to plant an apple seed into the ground, something which does not even look remotely like an apple tree. You understand that you are working with the powerful forces of nature here, which will slowly but surely nurture the seed into a seedling, a small tree, and then finally a fully grown adult tree. While we have no problem understanding this analogy when it comes to planting fruit trees, many have trouble understanding this in the context of their manifestations. They plant a seed in the ground and expect it to turn into a fully grown apple tree the next day. So they keep looking at the seed and wondering why it has not turned into a tree yet. They keep saying, "The apple tree which I have asked for is not here yet. Why is it taking so long?" Not realizing that the shoots have already started to grow from the seed and that universal forces have already been set in motion. The moment you set an intention, the moment you plant a seed into the ground, powerful universal forces are immediately set into motion with no delay. If we will see the shoots of the apple seed as part of the manifestation, if we will see the seedling as part of the manifestation, then things become a whole lot easier for us. Instead of staring at the seedling impatiently and wondering when it will grow into an adult tree, we can now appreciate each step along the way. Each step becomes confirmation for us that something is happening. We can now rest in the assurance that things are happening for us.
Some readers who read this are going to be worried. It seems to take a long time for a seedling to become a full grown tree. Does it always have to take that long?
This is the gestation period which so many spiritual authors and teachers often speak of. They teach that there is a gestation period for everything. For example, a baby takes 9 months to be conceived. An apple tree may take 5 to 6 years. In the case of our manifestations, there is also a gestation period, but here's the exciting part. The gestation period is entirely up to us. We determine how long or short it is going to be through our inner states. If you have a constantly worried and tumultuous inner state, then the corresponding gestation period is going to be very long because you have to spend a long time preparing yourself to receive your manifestations. If you have a peaceful inner state, the gestation period is going to be very short in physical terms.
This is amazing. I was getting confused because some spiritual teachers talk about how there always has to be a gestation or waiting period for our desires, yet others say that manifestations can be instant.
Both are correct in the sense that the moment we are ready for something and the moment we are aligned for something, the manifestations have to come and they happen very quickly for us. But what is holding most people up is the preparation time. They take a long time to be ready for their desires or to hold an inner state that is conducive for the manifestation of their desires. The sum of money I was talking about earlier took years to come to me, not because the gestation period for money manifestations is a few years. Rather, the money took a few years to come to me because I was not ready to receive it at that time. I was constantly worried, discouraged, and impatient. The moment I cleared all those negative feelings up within my inner state, the manifestation happened very quickly. I think I went from zero to having everything I wanted in the period of 1 month, and it kept getting better and better from that point on as I dropped more and more emotional baggage from within myself.
I think it was Anthony Robbins that said, "It is not change that takes a long time. It is preparing to change that does."
Exactly. That is what I am referring to here. It is not your manifestations that are taking a long time. It is the preparation of yourself to receive them that takes a long time. It is your dropping of negative feelings that takes a long time. As we have discussed earlier in our conversation, some people are never able to think about a particular intention or desire differently. When they think about it, it is always at a very low vibrational level of fear or worry. How can things change if you are constantly thinking fear and worrisome thoughts surrounding that subject? If an individual can somehow change his worry and fear thoughts to one of positive expectancy and joy, the manifestations will happen very quickly, just like that. When we say that certain manifestations are stuck, it is not because things are not happening for us. It is because we are looking in the wrong places. Just like the earlier example of the apple tree, if I had insisted upon seeing physical evidence of the apple tree, I would not have seen it for 6 years until it was fully grown. The same thing applies here. You have to understand that in the beginning, you will not see an apple tree. You may see a shoot, followed by a seedling, and then a young plant, and so on. You have to train yourself to look out for and focus on all these positive signs of your manifestations. Abraham Hicks has a wonderful analogy for this that is just coming to me as we speak. They say that when you make a trip from point A to point B, you are not at your destination for 99% of your journey. You are always somewhere between the 2 points until finally you've arrived at your destination. Therefore, as with any manifestation, the physical manifestation is only the last 1% of the journey. 99% of the time, you are moving on your way, but the physical manifestation has not occurred yet. So, to put it differently, what they are saying is that the physical manifestation makes up only 1% of the entire manifestation journey. The physical manifestation is the final bit that naturally occurs. What about the first 99%? For the first 99% of the journey, you're moving swiftly along the way, being carried along by all the universal forces and energy that is setting things into motion. I have often mentioned that an individual who is perceptive enough will be able to pick up and sense this energy and hence know the direction which their manifestations are taking. This is the point I made in my book, Inner Confirmation for Outer Manifestations. If you can cultivate this ability to focus on your inner world for the evidence of your manifestations, it will make your manifestation journey much easier.
So, how can we apply these teachings in real life?
When you feel tempted to worry about whether or when your manifestations are happening, step back and remind yourself that the path is the manifestation. Remind yourself that at the beginning, you will not see a full apple tree. Instead, you will see very positive signs of your manifestation. These signs and feelings let you know that things are happening and falling into place. Next, understand that the whole path may not always be clear to you. You may think that you need a particular sum of money to buy an item, when in fact, the item may be coming to you in some totally unexpected way. Therefore, the path will only be shown to you one step at a time. It is not your job to figure out what the path is, so rest in the easy awareness that there is nothing for you to figure out or do. Give up the need to question and ask about what you should do next. When there is something for you to do, it will be given to you very clearly. There is great value in sitting quietly by yourself, and it is also the reason why I have named this series of books, Come and Sit With Me. I am referring more to sitting in silence than sitting in conversation. Ideally, if you and I were having this conversation together, there would be conversation followed by long periods of silence. We would sit quietly together and just become aware of everything that is happening around us. We would adopt the stance of a neutral observer. I told this story at the beginning of the first book. In my early days, when I was first starting out on my journey, I always felt an urge to just go and sit somewhere quietly by myself. I enjoyed sitting in nature quietly by myself. That's because when you sit quietly and observe what happens within, you will also observe a spontaneous feeling of well being and joy well up within you. In fact, do it right now and notice how this joy is unconditional. Notice how this joy is not attached to any of your manifestations happening or any of the circumstances or physical conditions in your life. This joy just exists as pure, loving energy. It is there no matter what. Immerse yourself in this state of immense love and peace. The longer you immerse yourself in this state, the more beneficial it will be for you. Each time you find yourself worried about your impending manifestations, let go of everything and sit quietly by yourself. Go back to this basic state of love and peace. Feel those feelings well up spontaneously within you. That is all you have to do. There's nothing more you have to do. Each time you feel yourself wondering whether you are on the right path or doing the right thing, sit quietly by yourself and immerse yourself in this exercise until you feel the spontaneous feelings of well being and joy arise within you. You are slowly becoming aware of your beingness here.
Some readers would ask, how does sitting quietly by myself relate to my manifestations? How does it help me get the things I want faster?
It has everything to do with your manifestations. Sitting quietly by yourself in a relaxed and peaceful state means you are letting go of resistance. When you let go of resistance, you let go of resistive feelings that keep your manifestations from coming to you. You are letting go of feelings of fear, worry, desperation, insecurity, negativity, discouragement. All of those are due to social conditioning and subsequently added onto yourself. They do not represent your basic nature. Yet most of us are walking around with these negative feelings every single day without even noticing it. Therefore, by sitting quietly by yourself, you are becoming in touch with your basic unbridled nature. This nature is one of love and peace, both of which are very high vibrations on the emotional scale. So, the answer to the question, ironically, is that sitting quietly and doing nothing by yourself actually has everything to do with your outer physical manifestations. But there is a catch. This is the part which is most difficult for people to get. You cannot sit quietly and immerse yourself in the above exercise for the purpose of making your outer manifestations happen. Each time you try to do something for the sake of making something else happen, you are doing things conditionally. You are acting out of a sense of desperation and attachment to the outcome. That affects your inner state as well. Therefore, while you may be engaged in the same actions of sitting quietly by yourself, your inner state will not be the same as someone who is doing it purely without any ulterior motive. You must not have any ulterior motives when you do this work. Your intentions must be pure. If you can get to a point where you just sit quietly by yourself for 5 to 10 minutes a day, just because it feels so good, you would be letting go of a whole lot of resistance surrounding your manifestations. Sometimes that is all that is needed to get things going along. Chapter 7. The Path Lights Up for You.
Let's suppose that someone follows these instructions. What are some of the things they can expect? Can you give us an example of the path lighting up?
One good example immediately comes to mind, and it relates to a recent manifestation which I had. For the past few months, I've been experiencing an almost unbearable itch all over my body when I started to sweat. It was perplexing to me as I could not trace it to any probable cause. I have no skin problems, and this was just a general itch without any visible signs of a rash. In the past, I would probably have been tempted to focus on a whole lot on the perceived problem itself, which meant buying all sorts of creams and trying all sorts of medications for the itch. I would probably go to a skin doctor and do lots of research, but this time around, I immediately focus on the end result I desired, which was to be free of the itch, for my skin to be healthy, radiant, and restored to its original condition. I held this intention lightly and persisted at it, especially each time I felt the itch. Then the strangest thing happened. A few days later, when I was out shopping, I suddenly felt an urge to check out the section of the store where they sold shower creams and soaps. I felt guided to try a new brand of shower cream, something I had not done in at least a decade. You must understand how unusual this was for me because when I find a brand I like, I tend to stick with it. It is extremely difficult to get me to try a different product, especially since this was what I have been using for the past 10 years. I liked everything about it, including the scent. I am sure many of our readers can relate to this, but I have learned to listen when the universe sends me nudges, so I went ahead and tried a new brand. Within a few days of showering with the new product, the itch went away considerably in terms of its intensity and coverage, letting me know that I was on the right path. The universe literally answered me within a few days. What is noteworthy in this example is that I simply set a light intention and let the universe dictate the path. Had I insisted that my manifestation come to me in a particular way, for example, through a cream or some kind of medication, that would have been doing it the hard way. The universe, which is really infinite intelligence, always knows what is needed to solve the issue you have at hand. The universe does not even perceive a problem the way we perceive it. To the universe, there are no problems to be solved because everything can be easily replaced with a new version of reality. It just gives whatever you want to you, if you allow it. The universe and my body too knew that the shower cream I had been using was causing the skin irritation and itch. Yet I did not know this information on a conscious level. Therefore, the moment I allowed it, the universe gently guided me in the right direction and showed me the most straightforward path I could take to achieve my desired physical manifestation. The path which I took led to the eventual manifestation I desired.
What a wonderful example! Many people in similar situations would have done lots of research and get themselves thoroughly checked for allergies and so on.
Of course, I'm not a medical doctor and not qualified to give medical advice here, but it is interesting to think about this in terms of a manifestation framework. When someone is so involved in checking themselves out for allergies and reading up all of the different illnesses and conditions, what are they more focused on? Are they more focused on the presence of the condition itself or the absence of the condition? What is likely to be their inner state? Is it likely to be one of fear or one of peace? One thing so prevalent in our society today is that there is no lack of medical information out there waiting to scare us into some kind of action. Someone who is trying to sell you anti allergy bedding may give you a whole checklist of allergic symptoms. And the funny thing is that after reading that checklist, We usually end up agreeing with most of the symptoms on that list. Someone trying to sell you antidepressants may convince you that you are suffering from anxiety and so on. Oftentimes, our focus on the symptoms brings about these issues for us. We are literally thinking them into being. If I had gone down the path of reading about the various allergies and causes of the skin itch, I would probably have convinced myself that I suffered from a few of those as well. I would probably have taken a very convoluted path towards my manifestation. That was something I wanted to avoid, not because I was avoiding reality, but because I knew that the continued fixation on a problem would only perpetuate more of the problem. You must understand that these universal laws work just as well for both intangible and tangible manifestations. It can be especially difficult to ignore the problem, especially when the physical symptoms are happening because they demand your constant attention. You are feeling them all the time. For example, when I felt the itch all over my body, it was difficult to not focus on it and just intend something different. But that was when I needed to do it the most because I understood the importance of focusing on the desired reality.
Is this also the reason why physical conditions and health issues can sometimes be tricky to deal with?
Yes, because the physical symptoms are especially obvious when it comes to health issues. You are feeling them in your body almost all the time, and that makes it difficult to ignore. It takes a lot of inner work to focus on the desired reality, especially when the symptoms are literally staring at you in the face. But the moment you can do so, a new reality starts to emerge. The same principles we have discussed apply here.
I am beginning to see how this relates to physical manifestations as well. When someone notices the lack of his manifestations, it is similar to noticing the symptoms of physical illnesses.
That is correct. Focusing on the lack of your manifestations is the same as focusing on the perceived problem instead of the solution. The solution is the desired end result. If you will only focus upon the desired end result for most of your time, then the physical manifestations have to come very quickly. But unlike physical ailments, which have already reached the point of physical manifestation, the lack which we focus on is often imagined. In other words, the lack or the absence of our physical manifestations, which we continually focus on, is really not a lack or an absence at all. It is caused by our wrong understanding of the manifestation process. Something is happening, just that we are not aware of it.
There is another story you have told on how a book title was given to you. Is that a path lighting up as well?
Yes, it sure is. And thank you for reminding me. I have told this story several times in my other books, but let's go through the main points here again. I was just going about my life one day when suddenly a book title appeared in my mind. It was for Dale Carnegie's book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Up until that point in my life, I was a chronic worrier but did not know it. I was actually worrying myself sick and had come to see that destructive behavior as normal. If someone had told me I had a worrying problem, I would have dismissed them outright. But the universe knew better. The universe knew that my worrying was standing between myself and my highest good. It knew that if only I could rid myself of my incessant habit of worrying, everything would straighten itself out. But the issue was how to get this piece of information to me. The universe could certainly have sent friends and people into my life to inform me, but as mentioned, I would have dismissed their suggestions outright. I did not even perceive this to be an obstacle for me. That was when the universe must have decided it was better to just plant a book title in my head since I loved reading. It was the path of least resistance for me. Reading that book eliminated a huge chunk of my worrying and brought about many of my manifestations.
One interesting thing about the story is that when you received that title, you did not even know it was a book title.
That's right. It was just a phrase that suddenly came through in my mind. How to stop worrying and start living. I walked around with it for a few days before deciding to see if there was such a title on Amazon. And there was. That was a very clear signal and a clear path from the universe. Would it have worked for someone else, though? Suppose that I have never read anything all my life and I do not like reading. In that case, I don't think the universe would have reached out to me in this manner. A person who does not read at all would not have related it to a book title. Therefore, each person is different, and the universe always lights up the path in unique ways for us.
What I gather from this conversation is that the path can light up in an infinite number of ways for us.
That's the beautiful part. And we can never predict in advance how the path is going to light up for us. We can never tell what good the universe is going to bring because the universe has infinite ways to fulfill our deepest desires. What I have been able to do here is to list out as many ways as possible in which the path has been shown to me in the past and hopefully convince our readers that it is the case for them as well. When you are open to the possibilities, the paths open up for you. The first kind of path that may be shown to you is an inner nudge to take a particular action, even though the reasons may not be obvious to you at that time. For example, I was once tempted to go to a particular place or to check something out. I was tempted to change the brand of soap I was using. All of these manifest as clear impulses to take a particular action, the reason for which may not be immediately apparent to us at that time. The second kind of path that lights up for us may be spontaneous realizations and pieces of information that come to us. This may come in the form of book titles we receive or flashes of insight that we suddenly get. Everyone has received these insights at least once in their lives, and they usually happen when we least expect it.
For example, when we are showering,
We seem to keep getting back to the topic of showering today. But yes, when someone is in the shower, that is often when they are at their most relaxed and non resistant point in their day. They are usually not thinking about anything in particular, and their negative mind chatter is greatly reduced as well. This is when these universal impulses can come through to us clearly. Rather, that is when we can perceive and pick up on them clearly, since the universe is always sending us nudges. This is why we receive so many brilliant ideas and insights while we are in the shower. We are literally letting them in by softening our focus on all the perceived issues and problems in our lives. So, if just 15 minutes of operating in shower mode, of not focusing on our problems, can make us feel so good and bring about all these benefits, why not do it for most of our waking moments?
that's a wonderful insight. If we can operate in shower mode for most of our day, the changes will be tremendous.
When you look at life in this framework, then everything becomes very empowering for you. There are no longer any perceived problems that need to be solved. Instead, look at it in terms of one reality versus another. What is your current reality? And what is your desired reality? Once you have identified your desired reality, all you need to do is to place your continued focus on it until it replaces your current reality, and the cycle continues all through your life. Change can be easy and effortless. It is just preparing for change that takes a long time. We can often skip the preparation stage completely if we are sure of what we want. Chapter 8. Is there a manifestation mode?
I love this idea of operating in shower mode most of the time. Can you take us through it?
Shower mode is just the humorous name I give to this inner state, but there is a much greater spiritual significance here. The more conventional name for this state would be the heart space, where one literally operates from the space of the heart. This is a very powerful inner state to be in for our manifestations, but also one that needs some getting used to. That is because most of us have never consciously experienced living from our heart spaces. Most of us walk around operating from our head spaces. This means we are constantly thinking and rationalizing. We are always in problem solving mode, looking for the next fire to put out. As we have discussed earlier, being in problem solving mode all the time simply brings us more problems to solve and makes the problems more apparent to us. We are so focused on one problem after another that we forget we are here to enjoy and live our lives. We are here to have a good time experiencing life, not to solve problems. And so, most of us live in headspace most of the time from our beta levels of waking consciousness.
When you talk about beta levels, are you referring to brainwave frequencies?
That is correct. I am referring to the beta brainwave frequencies. Beta is the frequency associated with normal problem solving, rationalizing, and intellectualizing. The lower frequency beta waves are associated with anxious thinking. It is the normal mode in which we operate in most of the time. A beta brainwave frequency is between 12 to 30 hertz. This means that the electrical signals in our brain are pulsing at around 12 to 30 times per second.
Apart from beta, I believe there are also other frequencies.
Yes, there are three other major frequencies. When we step down from beta, we move into an alpha state. The alpha state is around 8 to 13 hertz, which is 8 to 13 cycles per second. Notice that it is a slower state than the beta frequencies. The alpha state is commonly associated with relaxation, a reduction in conscious thoughts, and creative problem solving. Some self help programs like the Silva method are built around operating at this level of brainwave frequencies. The creator of the Silva method, Jose Silva, believed that when we entered the alpha state, we could tap into the potential of the human mind and unlock many of its latent abilities. Moving down from alpha, we enter the theta states. Theta brainwave frequencies are around 4 to 8 hertz, which means they are even slower than the alpha waves. The theta state is associated with very deep relaxation, deep meditation, and also spiritual healing. Again, there are spiritual healing modalities that require the practitioner to operate from a theta state.
I believe this is the first time you have ever talked about brainwave frequencies in your books.
I did touch upon them briefly in my first book, Banned Mind Control Secrets, and also in my other book, Banned Manifestation Secrets. However, in those books, I did not go into detail and talk about the four major brain frequencies like what I have just done. That's because there is a caveat and a possible pitfall which I want to point out to our readers. Some readers may read about these various brainwave frequencies and become obsessed with getting into a particular state. For example, they may read about all the miraculous things that can happen to a person in the theta state and then spend all their time trying to get into a theta state themselves. There are meditations and tapes out there that claim to get you into a theta state, and one can spend a lot of time learning those techniques in order to entrain their brain waves to a particular level.
What are the downsides of doing so?
We have to realize that trying to get yourself into particular brainwave frequencies in order to force something to happen externally is a convoluted way of doing things. An individual can waste a lot of time in a spiritual quest just from doing something like that. I know because I was one of them too. I often jokingly tell people that I have tried every single technique there is out there for spiritual growth and manifestation. My house used to look like a metaphysical bookstore. In fact, I think I have a more comprehensive selection of self help books and programs than any well stocked bookstore. When you read about all the practitioners who are able to do spiritual healing or work miracles by being in an alpha or theta state, they have done so by being able to spontaneously access those states at will. Perhaps it is a talent or something which they unconsciously learn to do early in life. And that's good because it provides us with confirmation that such feats are possible, and they confirm what we know about operating from those brainwave frequencies. But when we try to replicate what they did by listening to tapes and CDs that attempt to get ourselves into those modes, it's like taking a pill to get there. We expend more effort than is necessary when our focus can be placed somewhere else. In other words, don't become obsessed with getting into particular brainwave frequency just to make certain things happen or to replicate a feat you have seen someone else do while there. It is much easier to work on yourself and your inner states following all the other techniques we have discussed here. I refer to these brain wave frequencies because they provide a useful framework for our discussion.
I see what you mean now. There are lots of teachings that claim to get an individual into a theta state or an alpha state. Can one really get into those states through those teachings?
We need to clear up some misconceptions here about brainwave frequencies. First, when we talk about being in a theta or an alpha state, we do not mean a state where there are only theta or alpha frequencies in our brain. We never produce only one kind of frequencies in our brain because these are electrical impulses we are measuring here. I happened to be talking to someone who was familiar with neuroscience research and have done it themselves at a major university. When you hook someone up to, let's say, an EEG machine to measure the electrical impulses in their brain, the results you get will be haphazard and all over the place. It takes years just to analyze and make sense of the results because there are so many electrical impulses that are picked up on, affected by so many different variables, including how the signals travel through the skull. We produce all kinds of brain waves at all times, and when we talk about being in a theta state, we are really referring to the predominant frequency that is being picked up on. In other words, our minds may be producing more theta waves as compared to the other three types of brain waves at that time. Another misconception is that one kind of brain wave is better or worse than the others. For example, beta brain waves have some sort of a bad reputation in spiritual circles because they are associated with mental activity, with thinking, worrying, and with active problem solving. But we should also understand that operating at a beta level is sometimes needed for us. For example, when I am trying to critique something or write up a research paper, I certainly need to be in a beta frequency to make sense and logically process the arguments that are presented. So I wouldn't see one type of brain wave as preferred over another. They all serve different purposes. My final point is that when we observe an individual doing spiritual healing, for example, brainwaves are one of the things we can easily measure with scientific instruments. But what is really going on in that individual's inner state? Did his inner state produce those brainwaves, or did his brainwaves produce that inner state? The inner state which I am talking about here is the sum total of an individual's thoughts and feelings, which cannot be picked up by any scientific measurement tool or machine available today. Do you see why measuring the brain waves and then trying to replicate it represents such a reverse way of doing things? Because we are merely taking one thing that is observable, the brainwave frequencies, and trying to replicate that in ourselves without questioning whether the frequencies are a cause or an effect. What if they are the end result of holding a particular inner state? If so, wouldn't it be easier to just cultivate that inner state directly? That's what the heart space method is all about.
This is an amazing way to put it. I have never thought about it this way before. So many people are saying that certain brain waves produce wonderful results, but it could be the other way around too. The practitioners may be holding particular intentions and inner states, which then lead to certain brainwave patterns.
In fact, the more I look at it, the more I am convinced that this is what actually happens. The intentions that we hold have the direct ability to affect our inner states, which goes on to change our brain frequencies. Things do not happen the other way around.
Let's talk about heart space or shower mode. Is this a state that you deliberately get into?
Yes, heart space is a state that you deliberately get yourself into. To learn how to get into heart space, I like to contrast it with headspace. The long discussion we just had is to help you understand what headspace is. Headspace is when you are thinking all the time with your logical brain. You are figuring things out, asking why, solving problems, and answering questions. Most of us operate like this at our workplace and even at homes. We have an endless stream of conscious thinking and questioning thoughts running through our mind. That is operating from headspace. I would like the readers to notice here the literal emphasis and focus that we place on the space in the head. That's why it is called headspace. It feels as if we are operating from and perceiving from that place where our brains and eyes are. Stop and notice it for a moment.
That's interesting. When I stopped and noticed for a moment, I felt as if I am literally living from the head. The feeling I get is that my consciousness is in the area of my head.
The feeling will be different for different people, but one tends to get the feeling that they are operating out of their heads. Their conscious attention and focus is on their heads because that is where all the conscious stream of thoughts are coming from. For ease of reference, we shall call this the beta level of waking consciousness, although I have already discussed several inaccuracies of doing so above, but it provides a good framework for our discussion. Now, it is usually difficult to ask someone to get into heart space immediately, so I like to use a little bridge here. This exercise will not apply to someone who worries incessantly in the shower, though. If you find yourself always worrying and thinking about stuff in the shower like you do during your normal waking moments, then it may not apply to you. However, most people move at least somewhat out of headspace when they shower. That is why the shower mode is so powerful and important here. While we still think about our problems and issues, we tend to think about them with a much softer focus while we are showering. Try and emulate how you feel when you are showering. If it is difficult for you to do so, it may even be a good idea for you to take a break after this chapter and go for a shower. Then you can really capture the way you feel. But for now, just imagine that you are taking a shower. How does it feel to you? For most people, the focus seems to have shifted downward. When we are in a shower, we are not operating so much from headspace anymore. Instead, the focus would have shifted somewhat downward into the space between our head and heart.
This is even more interesting. I am trying to capture the feeling I get when I am in the shower, and it seems I am thinking less. The pressure or focus is not so much on my head now.
The closest analogy I can think of is the center of gravity concept in physics. Every object has a center of gravity. This is a point on the object that allows it to balance itself perfectly. The object will either tip over or not, depending on where the center of gravity is. So, while this center of gravity is not a real point, it allows us to have a good reference point in our calculations and discussions. The same applies here. When we are talking about the space we are operating from, there is no physical indication on our bodies as to where that spot is. There is, however, a feeling. This feeling is a conscious awareness and importance that we place on that area. When we operate from headspace, it seems like we are living from our heads most of the time. Most of our focus is there. When we operate less from our head, it should seem that the focal point has shifted away from our heads into a space that is lower.
It is definitely not so much in my head now. I know that when I am in the office, I am operating from my headspace all the time. But when I imagine myself in the shower, the focus is not so much on the head, it seems to have shifted lower.
Great. That's the difference, which I hope our readers can also notice. This is a crucial part of our discussion. What you should also notice when you get out of your head more is that you soften the focus of your eyes. Your gaze becomes more diffused and less pointed in one area. You relax the muscles around your eyes. Your brows may not be as furrowed and tightly knitted together.
Yes, that's certainly true.
There are other immediately observable benefits too. Your heart rate drops, your breathing slows, and you feel more at peace. You instantly feel calmer and more relaxed. It all feels good to you. This is a non resistive and magnetic state which you are shifting into. Can you imagine all of these immediate benefits simply by making a conscious decision to shift out of your headspace? And we have not even explored heart space in detail yet. Even in a short few minutes of trying this mental exercise, we have experienced the immense possibilities of moving out of headspace or by operating less from headspace. We can experience all these benefits even without physically taking a shower. Chapter 9: Shifting into Manifestation Mode.
What I just realized is that we can get out of our headspace at any time, not just when we are in the shower.
Most people only allow it to happen to them in the shower by default. But we can actually go into shower mode with a conscious decision to do so at any point of our day. In fact, this state is so powerful that I should call it manifestation mode. This is the inner state in which a person is non resistant and focused away from all his problems, issues, and worries. That is when all the manifestations can happen. So let's recap the steps to get into manifestation mode or out of headspace once again. You do so by gently softening your gaze, by diffusing your focus. Relax your eye muscles and not look at things as hard. Next, move your conscious awareness down from your head where it usually is, down into the area of your heart. If you have trouble doing this step, imagine yourself taking a shower and just switching off, having a good and relaxing time. That relaxed feeling is what we are going for here. Now, since we are trying this exercise outside of the shower, some readers may be tempted to fall asleep because it feels so relaxing and good. That's because we usually have invigorating hot or cold water to keep us awake in the shower, while we do not have that benefit here. So, some readers may feel like falling asleep once they stop operating out of headspace.
This reminds me of meditation, where some people start falling asleep once they meditate.
It is interesting that you bring this up, as the underlying reasons are the same. When we meditate, we try to stop or reduce the flow of conscious thoughts. We are turning down all the mind chatter. Similarly, in moving out of headspace, we are also reducing the numerous thoughts we have about the things going on in our lives. Our conscious reasoning selves have come to associate thinking as part of our being. In other words, it thinks, or we wrongly believe, that we are our thoughts. That's why when we try to quiet the flow of thoughts, the mind perceives that there is nothing there to perceive and shuts down. It goes to sleep.
So, if someone is trying this exercise and having a hard time staying awake, should they try to stay awake or just go to sleep?
Sleep is essentially a state of non resistance. When we go to sleep, we momentarily let go of all our resistive worry and fear thoughts. Therefore, there's great value in going to sleep. However, one drawback of sleep is that you lose your conscious awareness and the ability to focus. Now, you cannot choose what to focus upon, and therefore, according to Abraham Hicks, you cannot create in your sleep. I would not encourage an individual to try very hard at staying awake while doing this exercise. Just let it come naturally. The more you do it, the easier it will be for you to stay awake. Also, it helps if you are doing it in a fairly well rested state. I have found that all these spiritual and inner exercises become much easier if you have sufficient sleep and are well rested. If your body is fighting for sleep or sleep deprived and you pile on all these exercises, then you're really straining on your body and trying to get it to focus when it is tired. So get a good night's sleep and try out all these exercises. That's what I always do nowadays, and the point which I will later return to. But for now, gently try and stay awake during these exercises. It is only when you are awake that you can consciously and deliberately choose what to focus upon. It is only when you deliberately focus upon something that manifestations happen. Therefore, if someone is able to stay awake while being in heart space without dozing off, it will be very powerful to them. They would have mastered something important.
This is wonderful. So, the key here is not to strain, but just to relax and let things happen gently.
Yes, and if you find yourself dozing off, that's fine. Simply repeat the exercise some other time. If you find yourself dozing off due to a general lack of sleep, then get well rested and repeat it some other day. Either way, you have lots of time to have fun with the stuff, so there is no urgency at all. All we have done up to this point has not really touched on heart space yet. All we did was to move out of headspace such that the focus was less on the head. Now I'm going to take the readers through how to enter heart space. Before we do so, I would like to use the brain waves that we discussed earlier for reference. We know that in normal waking consciousness in headspace, our brain is producing predominantly beta frequencies. When we move into heart space, though, our brain produces less of these beta frequencies, and it seems like the sharp edge of the knife is taken off. We feel less edgy and stress. Our focus is more diffused. As we move from headspace into heart space, we start producing more alpha brainwaves. Alpha thinking is more scattered and diffused, so you will find it difficult to engage in pointed, rational thinking in the alpha state. I'm not saying that you will lose your ability to think, function, or respond to the world around you. You will still be fully alert, awake, and able to do so. But just notice the differences that exist as you move from a beta waking consciousness to an alpha state. Most people have never experienced living in this manner before, so it does take some getting used to.
Great. I'm excited. How do we start?
To enter heart space, I find it helpful to use a phrase adopted by many spiritual teachers, that of dropping down into heart space. To understand why we are dropping down into heart space, it is helpful to use the earlier analogy. Most of us are operating in headspace most of the time. Our conscious waking awareness and all our focus is placed on the area of our head and eyes. When we drop down into heart space, we literally shift that focus downward into the area of the heart. That is dropping down into heart space. What we have done earlier through the shower analogy was to enter into a space somewhere between the head and the heart. So all we have to do now is to push that conscious awareness lower and act as if we are operating from the area of the heart. Move that conscious intent and focus even lower to the center of your chest, near the area of your heart. It may be easier to move out of headspace into shower mode first, before attempting to move lower into heart space. I am going to pause here to let our readers try this out.
I am getting a very spaced out feeling.
That's a very good description of heart space. Notice how you are able to read and have this conversation with me even as you are in heart space. It does not mean that we totally lose or suspend our abilities to think or reason. It just simply means that we are operating from an inner state that is less resistant and one built on peace and love instead of competition. The spaced out feeling that you are experiencing is the result of operating from heart space. Some may describe or feel it as an expansive feeling, like being at one with everything in the universe and at one with nature.
Yes, I am feeling that too. There seems to be a sense of universal love or compassion.
Isn't it amazing how these feelings arise spontaneously once we move out of headspace and drop down into heart space? Just by making this simple shift on a conscious level, we actually experience all the good that we are meant to experience. We experience manifestations of our basic nature as love, goodness, compassion, kindness, and oneness with all. Notice how natural it all feels for you here. There is no strain or struggle. You do not have to strain or struggle to conjure up those good feelings. This is probably the most powerful experience one can go through to experience our natural good. The longer you stay in heart space and live from heart space, the more exquisite feelings you will experience. For example, you'll feel further apart from your worry and fear thoughts that usually plague you. I like to call this state of mind one in which you literally forget how to worry. The worry and fear thoughts, basically all the negative thoughts, have trouble finding you because you are vibrating so far apart from them in the vibrational scale. You have disengaged from them completely. Your conscious thoughts slow down, and this is what causes the feeling of sleepiness in some people. However, if you are aware, you will also notice the general good feeling that exists in this state. This is the state of your true being, your natural connection to the universe.
I notice that I feel happy in this state without even doing much at all. Previously in Headspace, I always felt happy about something. There was always an external reason for which I felt happy. But now in heart space, the best way I can describe this is a sense of spontaneous happiness.
That is such a wonderful description. The sense of ease and well being that you feel is your natural connection to the universe. You are totally aligned with Source now. And this is the alignment which so many spiritual teachers speak of. By consciously disengaging from the constant chatter of self projected thoughts in your head and moving to the space of the heart, you have let go and allowed yourself to experience your natural goodness. You may even feel goosebumps all over your body. I experience it as a general sense of expansiveness, like I am connected to everything else, and everything else is connected to me. You literally become the universe in this state, because the universe is everything there is. You become one with all that is. This is such a powerful place to be in.
This is so fascinating. I never knew a simple exercise like this would be so powerful. I always thought we needed years of spiritual practice to achieve a state like this one.
Practice will help you in dropping into heart space more easily and are able to stay there longer even as you go about your daily life. However, notice how you have been able to get into heart space easily even with just a little practice. The ego mind always perceives ourselves as separate from everyone else on the planet. That is why it operates from lack and limitation, from the viewpoint of scarcity. It perceives resources as scarce precisely because of its faulty viewpoint that we are all separate from each other. Therefore, we must shore up and accumulate as much good stuff for ourselves before others do. It is an I win and you lose mentality, a zero sum game. But the universal truth is that we are all one and connected to one another. We are all connected to the universal mind. There is no separation between all of us. That has been taught by some of the greatest religious teachers throughout all the ages. Dropping into heart space allows you to realize this teaching for yourself. When you move out of your ego driven states into an alpha state, you no longer perceive yourself as separate from everything else. There is a sense of universal oneness. You get a sense that you are part of creation and part of all that is. You are literally a part of this wonderful universe. When you have this sense of identity that you are really a part of everything else and connected to everything else in the most beautiful way possible, then it is only natural that you'll feel a sense of spontaneous joy in your being.
Once we get into heart space, what are we supposed to do?
For a start, just practice dropping into heart space and staying there. Notice how good it feels. Notice how different it feels from your normal waking consciousness. Notice how you seem to be less edgy, less resistant, and pushing less hard against all the things that are coming at you in life. You seem to have a different perspective of them now. All your usual worrisome thoughts seem so far away and foreign to you. You may even appreciate the humor in them. These thoughts have now been replaced by spontaneous feelings of love, peace, ease, and well being. This is a very powerful inner state to be in, as it allows the good you have always asked for to finally come into your life. You are literally creating an opening for the good to come. Instead of pushing so hard against them and worrying about them, don't try to deliberately do or achieve anything while in heart space, although we certainly can, and that is what we will be discussing next. When you drop into heart space, seeming miraculous things can happen. Spontaneous healings, physical manifestations, and serendipitous circumstances that open up for you in your life. But that is not the reason for dropping into heart space at all. You practice dropping into heart space because it is your natural state of being. This is how you have been meant to live most of the time. Chapter 10: Setting Manifestative Intentions.
I can't help but notice how incredibly good, peaceful, and like I feel while in heart space.
This good feeling is the relief you feel from letting go. What are we letting go of here? We are letting go of our fears, insecurities, and worries that plague us during most of our waking moments. Recall that the conditioned mind, if left to itself, will automatically default to worrying and fear thoughts intended to keep us quote unquote safe. We mistakenly believe that thinking about our problems and ruminating over them will keep us safe and secure in this world. However, this form of persistent negative thinking actually has the opposite effect on our well being and on our manifestations. When someone lets go of all their negative thoughts and feelings and enters heart space, they are coming from a place of love and peace. No longer do you feel a need to worry about things or to fix problems. No longer do you perceive lack and limitation as strongly. In other words, you are coming into a greater recognition and a realization of the nature of your own being. When you are in heart space, you realize the nature of your true being as a creator who can truly be, do, and have everything that you want.
I get it now. What you're saying is that the ability to feel good and manifest is our natural state, but our negative thoughts and feelings cloud all of that.
Yes, and it is a concept which is not immediately intuitive to most people in our culture of doing. Imagine a piece of clear glass with the highest optical quality, meaning that all the light can pass through it without any distortion. This is your natural state when you perceive through the eyes of the universe. But for most people, this piece of glass is tainted with fingerprints and smudges which distort their vision. The smudges refer to our faulty beliefs and our negative feelings which cloud our perception. All they need to do is to polish the glass and wipe away all the fingerprints for their vision to be clear again. It is a subtraction, a dropping of negative thoughts as opposed to the addition of something. Moving into heart space is a wonderful way for us to drop all these egocentric, fear based thoughts. A lot of people try to pile on one technique after another. That would be like trying to draw on the clear glass with a marker in an attempt to make it clearer. The glass is already clear and pristine. Anything that you add onto it can only be a distortion. I remember the late Lester Levinson, creator of the Sedona method, teaching that every thought is a limitation. He goes on to say that every thought must be limited. Each thought that you have is like drawing on that piece of already clear glass. When you drop all your thoughts and all your negative mind chatter, you perceive clearly from the eyes of Source. You see right through the clarity. But how do we even drop those negative thoughts in the first place? How do we move into a place where we can perceive more from a universal perspective? That's where dropping into heart space is a useful exercise for us.
Once we drop into height space, are we supposed to stay there?
When you drop into heart space, you'll find, as I pointed out, that it is a very spaced out state. It is a feeling as opposed to a thinking state. Most people find it difficult to do any form of thinking or to work in that state. So let's say if I'm trying to type an email or I'm trying to get a report done, it may be difficult to do so from heart space because our reasoning faculties are not as engaged. This does not mean that we cease to perceive, it simply means that we perceive differently. So I don't usually drop fully into heart space if I have to get work done. Instead, depending on the task, I am usually midway between heart space and head space. This allows me to be in touch with both sides of myself at the same time. If I do not have to get work done, if I am simply going about my day and running my errands, I usually live more from heart space. There is actually something more powerful about being in heart space, and that is the setting of intentions. Being in heart space allows us to set intentions with more clarity and intent, which is something useful for our physical manifestations.
How should we set intentions while in heart space?
First, what you want to do is to drop into heart space. Once you are there, you will get a feeling of expansiveness and connectedness. You will find yourself relaxing and easing into the flow of things. That is when you are in a non resistive state. Once there are a few things which you can try. You can either set intentions through the use of a statement, for example, I intend blank, or you can think about something which you desire very much and appreciate all the good and beautiful aspects of it. For example, if I am trying to manifest a new computer in my life, then I may bring it to mind while in heart space and imagine myself using the computer while at the same time feeling myself appreciating the various aspects of my new computer. How fast it is, how well built it is, how gorgeous the design looks, how good it looks in my room, and so on. This is another way of setting intentions through our feelings of appreciation and preference for something.
Most people set these intentions in headspace instead of heart space.
That's where a key difference arises. When you set such intentions in headspace, you have to deal with critical and intrusive thoughts. For example, if I were to intend a physical object while in headspace, my critical mind will be engaged and it may throw up all sorts of objections or worry feelings, the most common of which is, how are you going to afford that? That is a common objection we are all familiar with. The advantage of setting intentions in heart space is that you disengage the critical reasoning mind. You quiet it for a moment, long enough for you to focus on the intention that matters. That would allow someone to set intentions more effectively and dwell on their intentions more purely without the barrage of interrupting thoughts which we discussed at the start.
I remember this was the issue we were talking about at the start, how to think about our intentions without also bringing up spontaneous worry thoughts. This is a wonderful way to do it.
When you are in heart space, you are vibrating at a level which is closer to love and peace, far away from the negative vibrations of worry or desperation. Therefore, if you start by being in heart space and then think about your intentions or what you intend while you are there, you have a much easier time than trying to do things in reverse. Most people try to do it in reverse, which is to intend or focus on what they want despite all their fear and negative thoughts. That's starting at a very low vibrational place and hoping that their thoughts of the things they want will make them feel better. But it rarely works that way because of the law of attraction. When we are vibrating at a rather negative place, all we will attract are more negative thoughts, even though we are thinking about what we want. That is why all the obstacles and challenges, the seeming impediments to our manifestations, become so obvious to us when we intend in headspace. That's also doing it the hard way because we cannot expect our physical manifestations to flow while also holding on to all our worry and fear thoughts. The key is just to reverse the procedure. Get into a good feeling place first, then intend. You'll be putting the horse before the cart and not the other way around.
This is a valuable piece of advice. I can't tell you how many times I have tried to make myself feel better by deliberately thinking about my intentions when I was feeling down.
When the flow of negative thoughts are very intense, the law of attraction is working to bring you more negative thoughts. Therefore, to try and go against the flow and think positive at once is going to be an uphill task. If you try to think about your desires in that state, then it becomes even more difficult because all you will be able to access are negative thoughts related to your unmanifested desires.
So all it takes is a simple switch, get into heart space first, and then intend.
That's right. Whatever intentions you set in heart space are very powerful. They're powerful because you set them very purely, with no contradictory vibrations and counter intentions. And you may know from reading my other books that a pure intention is more than halfway there already. This means that if you will not think anything that is counter to this pure intention which you have set, your desires have to become manifest in physical reality very quickly. Therefore, be mindful of the intentions that you set in heart space. The heart space is an extremely manifestative state.
So, what should we do after we have set our intentions in heart space?
After you have done so in heart space, just let the intention go. Release it from your consciousness completely and immerse yourself in the good feelings of just being in heart space. Savor the deliciousness and the richness of being in that space. What I have found is that the intentions I set in heart space tend to come true for me very quickly, and even faster if I give up any insistence on the path it will take. If only I will keep an open mind and stop interfering in the process, then the physical manifestations happen very quickly for me. But if I keep dictating that they come in a certain way, then the manifestations will invariably get delayed. Chapter 11: Living from a Manifestative State.
This is the part which trips most people up. Let's say they have managed to set their intentions purely in heart space, but how do they let go of any attachments to the outcome?
This is where the two parts of our conversation today tie in together so nicely. In the first part of this conversation, we talked about how the path is actually our manifestation. And in this second part, we talked about the powerful technique of getting into heart space and setting our intentions. The question you have asked allows us to merge these two powerful concepts together. After setting your intentions purely in heart space, you let go of it by reminding yourself that the path is the manifestation. And more importantly, any path can be the manifestation. We just do not know which path it will take beforehand. If you can gently remind yourself of this fact that in infinite number of pathways are possible between your current reality and your desired reality, then you will stop insisting so hard on how your desires materialize for you. You'll realize that the path is in the making and that there are infinite ways which the universe can delight and surprise you if you let it. One very useful spiritual principle I learned was to notice what is different, not what is the same in your physical experience. After you have set your light intentions in heart space, you want to adopt the neutral stance of an observer in your daily life and start to notice what is subtly different. This is a very insightful and illuminating exercise in of itself because we have always conditioned ourselves to look out for what stays the same. So all we can readily point out are things that remain the same in our physical reality. But if you make a conscious decision to flip that, to notice what is different in your physical reality after you intend, then all sorts of miraculous things begin to happen in your experience.
Can you give us an example of this?
Definitely. As mentioned, it was difficult for me at first to focus on what was different, especially at the start of my journey when I was jaded and disappointed. But I decided to put it into practice with some persistence. I would consciously remind myself to look out for what was different in my experience after I have intended something. Bear in mind that the universe always responds instantly to our intentions and desires. There is no delay and no time lag. Therefore, the smallest signs of physical manifestations should always be there in our physical experience if only you'll pay attention to them and focus on them. When I started noticing what was different, I was blown away by a whole new world which existed that wasn't there before. For example, I noticed that doors were literally being opened for me everywhere. After I started to intend more abundance and prosperity in my life, people would start holding the doors open for me when I went to malls, buildings, and other places. Often, strangers would open them and let me go first. This was something that had never happened to me before, and a subtle change in my physical reality. This was positive confirmation that I was slowly moving into my new, desired, energetic reality. Another change I noticed was that I started receiving top notch treatment at banks and retail stores the moment I walked into them. I am certainly no celebrity or famous personality. It got to a point where it embarrassed me somewhat, since I often wasn't intending to get anything from the store. Can you also see how my old conditioning was at work within me as I was moving into my new desired reality? A part of me was still wondering whether I deserved all of that VIP treatment, so I released those faulty beliefs from my consciousness as well and just settled into enjoying my new reality fully. The third change I noticed was how little waiting I had to do. Everything just seemed to flow easily for me. When I decided to eat at a particular restaurant, there was always a seat available for me. When I decided to go somewhere, there was always a spot waiting for me. Everything just fell into place effortlessly for me when I started putting all these spiritual principles into practice.
These are amazing examples. I am going to practice noticing what is different from now on. What I realized is that in the beginning, the changes will not be tangible physical manifestations. Instead, they may be new things we notice in our experience.
That's exactly right. What we are doing here is asking for a new desired reality in which all our desires are manifest. However, Along with all the physical manifestations which we deliberately intended, there are also many wonderful things waiting to happen in that new reality that match up to the vibration of our physical manifestations. There is an endless flow of good things waiting to happen to us that matches the good vibrations of what we have asked for. For example, I had not deliberately asked for doors to be open for me and for good service, but the vibrations of those experiences matched what I was actively asking for, and therefore, those things were delivered into my reality as well.
Is this why we do not need to worry about the small details of our intentions and desires?
If you will only take care of the bigger picture and the broader general feelings of well being, then all the small details will sort themselves out for you. All the details that are in harmony and in alignment with the broader picture of what you are asking for will be delivered for you. Think about how much intending work I would have to do if I had to intend every small detail of my day. Think about how much intention setting I would have to do if I had to go through the process of manually intending every single door to be open for me. That's not the way we were meant to function. We do not have to ask for every little thing. We are here to enjoy life to the fullest and to have fun with all of this. If you will make enjoyment and fulfillment your starting point, then the rest of the minor details will be filled in for you.
This discussion also reminds me of a famous biblical saying in which Jesus said, "All good things will be added unto you."
If you will sort out your inner state first, if you will live from heart space most of the time, if you will give up your fears and worries, then all good things will be added unto you and more. You do not have to go into great detail and intend the specifics of the good things that you want. Everything that matches your predominant vibration will be added into your experience.
Very powerful indeed. Do you have any final tips for our readers before we end this conversation for now and let them apply this in their lives?
I do. Try living from heart space for the next few days or so. Gradually extend the period of time you spend in heart space until it feels naturally for you. Try to immerse yourself in heart space while running your daily errands, while you are meeting people, and while you are just out there interacting in the world. While there, gently notice what is different. You'll be surprised at how differently the world treats you when you come from a place of loving kindness and ultimate peace. You will be surprised at how harmonious the world becomes and how everything seems to revolve around you. Notice the things that are different. The more you notice these subtle changes and give your silent approval to them, the more you allow them, the more you vibrate at a higher level and attract even more of those experiences into your life. And remember, it all starts with realizing that the path unfolding for you right now is your manifestation taking shape. There is nothing more you have to ask for or to sort out. It is done.
Thank you so much, Richard, for yet another illuminating conversation with us. And why do I get the feeling that we will meet again?
We will definitely meet again. And until next time, practice dropping into heart space, setting intentions, and noticing what is different. I am so excited at the possibilities that lie ahead for you.